here's Ed Bernstein.
Come on! Are you with me? I can't hear you. I said, are you with me? Come on!
That's a quick little spice of, or slice of, and spice, of
Yeah.
Earl Turner.
Spice and spice.
Spice and slice. Yeah, a tongue twister too. You know, when I look at that and I think back about your career, and we were talking before the show how life is about the journey and not the destination.
Right.
And your journey started so young, so young. You were like, well, take me back. What was the first time you thought about music? You were like in your teens or younger?
No. I was 8 or 9 years old.
Right.
And I'll tell this story later. But when I first started, we used to tune the guitar to an open E chord. And it was too big for me to hold.
How did you even get a guitar?
Well, it was in our house. There were always instruments in our house.
Your
There was
parents
an old
were
banjo.
musically inclined?
My mother played piano, and we still have the piano. It was always out of tune, but it seemed like when she played it, it was in tune. My dad had a guitar. We just always had some kind of musical instrument around.
Just as hobbies, right? I mean, they weren't entertainers.
Yeah, no, not at all. But they were talented people. My grandmothers played in the church choirs, and they sang, and so I've always heard music from the moment I was born, probably before, I'm sure. I've always heard music. And so I picked up the guitar, literally, and it was too big for me to hold like this, so I laid it flat on my lap, and I would play it with my thumb until it got blisters, you know? And one day, my dad walks up on the front porch, I'm sitting there just strumming away on my guitar and not really playing much, and he says, boy, why don't you tune that guitar up and learn to play it right?
Right.
And so I got the Mel Bay guitar book, which is the first guitar book of anybody. Mel Bay, you all know it, and tuned it up, and that started me actually.
So you learned by your book learned through on your own?
By ear. Oh yeah.
By ear.
Oh yeah.
But there has to be. But that's a natural inclination.
You know, but you know what I really believe it is. I think it's just being subjected to it. You know, I think that kids, if they hear music, they're more inclined to understand it, to appreciate it, and therefore to be able to duplicate it. If kids grow up around dancers, you know, or with dancing parents or sports parents, athletes, I mean, you look at the Williams sisters, you know, you look at the Mannings, you know, it depends on what you're conditioned to as a child. I really think that that's a big influence on the person that you will become and the person that you're able to become.
And you have firsthand experience in this because you've raised a family in the same way, right?
That's right, that's right. My youngest son is actually a dancer, Aaron. He was on So You Think You Can Dance, one of the finalists on that show, the first tap dancer to go that far. But Aaron grew up on the road with his mom, Christine, and me. I mean, that's what he did. He was up at 2 in the morning, you know, out at breakfast. You know, that was his lifestyle. And so, you know, consequently, at some point in time, he decided that he wanted to dance, and he wasn't very good at it. And we said, well, if you're going to do that, you know, we need to get lessons. And he gravitated to it.
But, you know, a lot of families, parents in the entertainment business would take the opposite approach. They wouldn't want to travel with their kids. They want to keep their kids home, not disrupt, you know, the childhood years.
Yeah.
You found it differently.
Well, what I found was that it was very, very important for us to never discourage, you know, our kids with regard to what they wanted to do. I think that for my parents, my dad said, you can't make a living playing music. You can't make a living playing guitar. That was his attitude and feeling. But when I wanted to leave home,
what did your dad do?
My dad worked for 40 years for Southwestern Bell Telephone. Ma Bell, he loved it.
Right.
He loved his work.
And that paid the rent, and then he had fun playing his...
and he played in a band with 4 other guys, and they were called the Alley Cats. And it was because they rehearsed in the back of the trumpet player's jewelry shop. And the back door of the jewelry shop opened to the alley. and people walking through would stop sometimes and listen to him. But it was an interesting band. It was piano, trumpet, guitar, and drums. There was no bass. I'm not sure. But anyway, the Alley Cats, and that was his hobby.
And which you grew up in Missouri?
Missouri,
Yeah.
in a little town called Fayette, Missouri, which is it's right in the center of Missouri, right in the heart of Missouri. About 3,000 people. That's all it was.
Right.
And it was a great place to grow up. Small towns.
And when did you actually perform in public, professionally for the first time?
Well, that's interesting. The understanding is anytime you get paid,
Right,
you're
right.
professional.
Yeah, you're a professional.
So that was
Yeah.
13.
Okay.
Okay. The American Legion Hall.
Right.
A guy by the name of Ray Drew decided he wanted to manage the three of us. It was my brother and another kid and me, and there were the three of us.
And what did your brother do?
And my brother was playing drums at the time. Yeah.
And
My brother was playing drums.
And you're still on
at the
guitar?
time. And I was playing bass.
Oh, you're a bass.
And we had another guy that played guitar. And so Ray Drew, they called him Knucklehead.
Right.
Ray Drew took us to the American Legion Hall, 2 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever, and we played, and there was like 25 cents. So that was actually the start, if you will.
Was that the value of the performance?
Yeah, probably so, since we played 3 songs for like an hour, the same 3 songs, yeah.
Well, it's certainly more
imagine so.
valuable now. We
Yeah.
have some video we'll take a quick look at to see how you've improved since those years.
I hope so.
Okay.
Smile, smile, smiling Billy, sing a song. Come on, y'all. Sing it, sing it, sing it, sing a song. Sing it, sing it, sing it, sing a song. Sing it, sing it, sing it, sing a song. Sing it, sing it. Do you remember 21st night of September? Love was changing her mind, pretender, chasing the clouds. There's a party going on right here, a celebration to last throughout the year. So bring your good times and your laughter too. We're gonna celebrate your party with you. Come on now. Celebration. We're gonna celebrate and have a good time.
Okay, so now you're a little bit older in that video.
Yeah.
So, what
Lot
kind,
older.
what kind of music did you enjoy growing up? And was it the Motown stuff at that time? Was it the stuff in
was
church?
Everything. I think that was one of the advantages of growing up in our time as a baby boomer. We only had AM radio,
Right.
so you heard everything. You heard country, you heard rhythm and blues, you heard pop, you heard rock. So that was, my musical background is all those things. And then in my home, of course, I heard gospel and country western. My father loved country western music. And I like to joke and say my father only liked 3 kinds of music: gospel, country, and western. And so all of that is who I am, which is interesting because when I was going back to do this show, to conceive this show, I learned a lot of things about myself musically that I hadn't actually thought about.
Well, let's talk about that.
Okay.
What comes first? You start conceiving a show, or you get the dates, or you make a deal with the hotel, and then you start conceiving, or you conceive first and then try to find some dates?
I think what happens to you as you get older is you try to figure out new ways of doing the same thing, because actually you are who you are.
Right.
So when I have a performance, particularly here in Las Vegas, it's always important to me to try to present myself differently. So therefore I come up with an idea. What's the theme for this show? The last time it was the celebration of the icons, because we had lost Prince and David Bowie and Natalie Cole. And it is just the timing of that was right. This show has always been in the back of my mind. I just hadn't done it yet. So, and this show is bigger, and I don't want to say bigger, but it's special. It's really, really special, because I get a chance to go back to the turning points in my life where certain things happen to me, and this has probably happened to you too as well. There are certain things or certain people that you meet that I don't believe is by accident. I believe there's a reason for it. And as I thought back over certain points in my career, I realized there were a lot of moments where someone said something to me. For example, when I first played for an audience by myself, it was in the coffee house in Columbia, Missouri. The reason that happened was I was playing guitar in the park, and a guy walked by and said, "Hey, you're pretty good. You should go up and do the open mic." That was a turning point. I hadn't really thought about it. Don't know the guy, but that guy literally changed my life.
Stranger passing through your world.
Just a stranger changed my life. What my dad said to me about picking up the guitar and learning to play it the right way, tuning it up, that was a turning point.
What was the song that you played in that coffee house?
You know what? There were a number of them. What I do remember is, of course, James Taylor, Carole King, Seals and Crofts, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. That's all, what was going on at the time, the 70s. That was a time of discovery. I mean, you actually had a white friend, or a black friend, That was the time we were changing the country.
Opening up,
with our
opening up your world.
Yeah, opening up communications. And the civil rights, laws had just been passed, and colleges all over were places where people actually had an opinion, and they were not, kids were changing our country. And that was us.
Especially so much at that time through music.
Yep, musically, the world was changing, and we were a big, big part of that. So my going to the coffee house was crucial in pushing me in the direction of becoming the entertainer that I am. If that hadn't happened, I don't know where I'd be.
Did you ever have another job?
Oh yeah, I had 3 at the time. I was working for an oil company there in Missouri, MFA Oil, and I was working 2 other part-time jobs. Not because I needed to so much, but because
your father told you you're never going to make a living being a musician.
Right. My rent was $50 a month. Of course I had a roommate, but I don't know that I needed to have 3 jobs. But because of the way I'd been raised, you had to work and you had to take care of yourself. So I wanted it, to make as much money as I possibly could so that I didn't have to move back home. Right. That was the important thing, not moving back home.
So when did you make that leap, okay, I'm going to be a full-time musician, entertainer, and this will be my passion and my career?
I had just seen Tina Turner for the first time. And that review literally blew me away. And then I had a friend take me to a nightclub where I saw a review called the Earl White Review, and they were from Chicago. Very, exactly the same format as Tina Turner. And the band blew me away. So I went up to Earl White, introduced my 19-year-old self and said, I need to play with this band. What do I have to do to play with this band? I only need to make $50 a month. Tell me what I need to do. And he said, well, what do you do? And I said, I play guitar, and and he said, what else do you do? I said, I play bass. And he said, what else? And I said, I play drums. I said, I can do whatever you need me to do. I just need to play with this band. And that was the start. And literally, I ran away with the band against the advice of my parents, who said, you should really get a job.
How old were you then?
19.
19. And this is, we used to have a judge, Earl White. Not the same Earl White.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, we had a district court judge. Yeah, for a long time when I first started.
That was it. Yeah. That was the start.
And how would that, in today's world, if one of your kids was 19 and said, hey, I'm leaving home, I'm going to go with a band, would you look differently upon it?
I would look differently upon it because I know how tough it is. I say to people, there are 2 things I wouldn't want to have to do in this particular world, in this particular climate, is that it would be tough to raise kids, tougher, and to get into the music business. Very, extremely tough.
But there are people who feel that there's actually more opportunity because you can go on YouTube, you can go on The Voice, you can go on America's Got Talent. I mean, there's roads that are different than going and sleeping with the producer.
Right. Well, there are a lot more outlets, but with that comes considerably more competition. And the difference is with the industry is now the concentration is not on the talent, it's on marketing. It's what's going to sell. And so they throw a lot out there, and whatever catches on, that's what they run with. So you seldom see the likes of our legends like Stevie Wonder and Paul McCartney and artists who have been developed over a period of time and developed themselves. And these people are obviously legendary, but what I'm saying is you hear a lot more, or you see a lot more one-hit wonders and people who were hot today and gone tomorrow because our attention span is so much shorter. And we don't gravitate to, performers like we used to. It's all about the visual and the sensory overload. Right. It's just harder because there's more competition and more opportunities to get it out there. But it's hard. Social media, it's really probably one of the hardest things in marketing you'll ever do.
Right.
So
when you talk about legends, what qualifies somebody today, in today's world, to be a legend? Is it a number of years you've been doing it and you're still doing it and still good at it? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. Longevity and staying relative. I think that when you have someone like a Stevie Wonder, for example, because he is by far my all-time favorite. You have someone like Prince. You have someone like Madonna. These people share. These people are extraordinary because not only of their longevity, but the ability to stay relevant, to stay important, to have a voice. Right. I think that is a part of what you would consider to be a legend.
Yeah, I have this conversation with my kids a lot. And my own opinion, when you talk about great talent, I like to see somebody who not only has a great voice, but can play an instrument, that can write, and also has a stage presence, and has it all. When you see somebody that gets up and somebody else has produced a song and written a song, and they get up and they're lip singing, because they can't even dance and sing at the same time. Yeah. And sometimes they're so popular, it's mind-boggling to me. I'm saying to my kids, well, where's the talent?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. It's tough. But the industry and our world has changed to the degree that our young people, they don't mind that. They expect that. They would rather see, the person dancing and or flying on some kind of harness or something and lip syncing than actually, sitting down and just singing them a song.
Hey, and speaking of talent, let's take a look at some of the talent you're going to be bringing to the South Point this coming weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, February 17th, 18th, and 19th. Earl Turner. Let's take a quick look.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Mr. Earl Turner. I came here to party, and party is what we're gonna do. Listen, we work hard every day. Tonight, we're gonna shake it loose. People all over the world, come on, join hands, come on with me. Yes, you don't need no ticket. Come on with me. Come on. Hey, hey, the blues is all right. 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 I wanna take you. I wanna take you. Picking up the hanky off the floor. I'll treat her like a lady. Treat her like a lady. I'll light a cigarette if she smokes. I'll help her with her coat. I'll treat her like a lady.
Well, okay. I mean, you do it all, man. You can sing, perform, play. All the criteria that I talked about, what makes a legend, man, you are there.
And actually, I'm going to do those things in this show. Rehearsing.
Well, that's okay.
I'm actually going to play the guitar. I'm actually going to play bass, and I'm going to play drums. Something that I haven't done since I've been here in Las Vegas. Oddly.
When did you first come to Las Vegas? The very first
1989.
Was your first experience in Vegas?
Time.
Where?
the dunes.
Oh, yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah, every place I've played, they've blown down. So you should be careful with the studio here. Yeah, the dunes, the Sands, the Aladdin,
Right.
all the Desert Inn. Played them all.
Right,
Loved them.
but so have all the other
Loved them.
legends. Played
Yeah,
them all.
Exactly.
Right.
And that was a good time. That was a good time in Vegas.
Yeah.
It really was.
And then you stayed. Were you here for a while then in '89 or?
Oh, well, we were trying to, actually establish some roots
Right.
here. So yeah, we actually moved here, got an apartment. My son was, our son was a couple of years old here in Las Vegas, and we just kind of grew from there. Just tried to stay busy.
And then you left for a while. I know you were in New Orleans during Katrina, right?
That was.
What does that look like?
Yeah. That was after I had gone through the whole becoming a headliner.
Right, you had a whole career,
headliner,
yeah.
The whole thing, and then I had an offer from Harrah's to go to New Orleans to the Showroom, and we went to New Orleans in 2004, and then on my birthday, August 29th, 2005, Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans. We thought we were good. We thought it was okay, and then of course the levees broke the following morning.
Were you
that was
living
life-changing.
in the French Quarter or in that area? Or?
No. We were living actually across the river.
Okay.
Across the river, and the flood was actually in New Orleans, but naturally it affected
Everybody.
It affected everybody.
Couldn't drink. You couldn't drink the water. You couldn't.
We were without power probably 30 days, almost a month, I think, in most of the city.
And
It
what
was a tragic time.
was your feeling at that time? It was like such devastation.
Stunned.
Yeah.
Stunned. The thing that happens, I think, that when you have something tragic happen to you, there's a defense, I believe, that's built in. God gave you a defense, and if you use it right, you just keep moving. That's what I did. I had too many things. I had kids in high school. We had our house there. We didn't know what the situation was as far as my work was concerned. I just had to keep moving. So we just put things into motion. My wife and I just started to make plans to come back to Las Vegas, to get the kids back in school. We'll deal with the work situation, as that comes. And that's what we did. We had to do that.
Nothing like a flood to drive you to the desert.
That's right, exactly. Glad to be back in the desert too, by the way.
And for your show at the South Point this week, you have your sister. What does she do?
My sister actually sings, which I didn't know until we were adults. Okay, because she was 3 years younger than me. So when I left home,
Right.
I left this kid that was barely in high school, and I heard her sing years later after we were adults. And I'm like, what? Denise, what? When did you start singing? Well, I come to find out she'd been singing in her room for a long time. So it was interesting. One of the things that I have learned, and I had asked myself this question when I was looking at this picture of me at 16, what would this grandfather say to that kid? And the thing that I figured out was that you can go home again. You should go home as much as you possibly can. When I was out here struggling, I was always afraid to go home because of the pull of home, the comfort of home, the negativity of home. Where people say, "See, I told you, you couldn't do it."
Right. Yeah.
So I did not go home as much as I could. What I appreciate now about going home, even though it's changed, it's different, is the sense of being home, that connectivity, that grounding that says this is where you came from, this is where you started. And what I find is that going home gives me a sense of encouragement, and of stability that says, you know what, you've left home and you can accomplish things in your life. So I would say to that kid, you know what, you're going to be okay. It's all right if you go home. You can deal with the negativity. You can deal, with being there. But go home, reconnect.
And you're so multifaceted as an entertainer, but you also have this message that you're delivering. I mean, you put this whole thing together, you may have maybe a Broadway show.
Well, I would like for it to be. I think that as you get with age comes a certain maturity and a certain amount of feeling that you need to leave a mark. I've often said to my wife, listen, If I have a memorial service and people are going to speak, if all they can talk about is Earl Turner the entertainer, do not let them come up. Okay?
Right.
I do not want them up there. I only want people whose lives that I may have touched to speak, because those are the people that really, really, really knew me. And so our time here is so brief. I think it's important that you try to do as much as you can while you can to make a difference. Sounds cliche, doesn't it?
But it comes with living a life with a lot of trials and tribulations.
And blessings.
And blessings.
Yeah.
And a lot of wisdom that you accumulate. I know that you hang with Clint Holmes.
I hang with these crazy people in Las Vegas. Clint and George Wallace, Jerry Matillas, Antonio Fargas from Starsky and Hutch.
You guys get together.
This is a great community. Yes, and you were invited.
Breakfast. What do you talk about when you...
What?
Yeah, you have breakfast.
Everything.
Everything. Huh?
Everything. Careers.
We have some video of you and Clint singing together.
Really?
I was wondering if you guys do this
How
at
did
breakfast.
he get in this interview?
I don't know, but you can catch Earl Turner at the South Point Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 7:30.
Yes, 7:30.
7:30. Don't miss them.
You'll enjoy it.
One time. I think you can follow along. Darling, you sent me. Darling, you sent me. Darling, you sent me. Honest to do, honest to do, honest to do. Now I know that you thrill me, baby. I thought it was an infatuation, but no, it lasted so long. Now I find myself wanting to marry you, not you. I mean, no. Baby, you sent me. Your magic, go ahead and scat a little bit.
If you've been hurt in an accident, turn to someone you can trust. Enough said. Call Ed.
I'm Ed Bernstein, and I've been helping you and your neighbors for almost 40 years.